COVID-19 mandates. Security. That's what we expect from our government, but how far are we willing to go to ensure that security? How many individual rights and personal choices are we willing to dismiss? It's easy to deeply examine the many different views on the current COVID-19 situation and understand multiple different arguments. How should this pandemic be handled? Should we get stricter with our regulations or start to relax some? Were these regulations ever truly warranted? Today I will be discussing the opposing arguments for and against COVID-19 related mandates. I received most of my information from the Northwest Florida State College databases and the CDC website. During my speech, I will first discuss the topic of COVID-19 and some of the steps that have been taken to try and combat it. Then I will discuss how our politicians and citizens view these regulations. And finally, I will discuss the constitutional integrity of these mandates. COVID-19 was first reported in China in December of 2019. There have been over 400 million cases worldwide and over 5 million deaths. And that statistic comes from the United States COVID-19 stats. It's an RNA virus caused by SARS-CoV-2 infection that is constantly evolving and mutating. According to the NIH, new mutations are able to increase or decrease infectiousness and can also increase reinfection rates and decrease vaccination efficacy rates. COVID has an incubation period of 14 days but averages at 5 days. Clinical symptoms can range from asymptomatic to pneumonia or even death. COVID-19 is primarily a pulmonary disease, but data suggests that it also leads to cardiac, hematologic, hepatic, neurologic, renal, and other complications. Persistent symptoms after recovery have been noted. There are now 3 vaccines that have been approved by the FDA for use in the United States. The mRNA vaccine that have been recommended because they have less risk of adverse reactions. The first vaccine was approved in December of 2020, and now over 80% of the country is fully vaccinated. There are many regulations put in place to combat COVID, such as mask mandates, travel bans, vaccine mandates, lockdowns, curfews, and more. Now, 764 days after the first death reported in the US, and despite the fact that 81.9% of the population is vaccinated, people are still wearing masks, businesses are understaffed and cannot exceed their full capacities, travel is limited, and international travel is restricted to only vaccinated people. Cases are still high, and people who have been vaccinated or previously contracted COVID are catching the new strains. According to Dick Newbert, vaccines and masking have been proven effective in preventing a greater spread of COVID and in reducing hospitalizations and deaths from the virus. According to studies, of the 972,000 plus US COVID deaths, 98 to 99% of those were among unvaccinated people. Historically, the government has never mandated the private sector to require vaccinations. It has always been left up to state and local authorities. Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas believes that vaccine mandates would hurt us more in an already difficult time. He stated previously in December of 2021 that we are already struggling to find workers, provide services, and provide for families. He also mentioned that a vaccine mandate would cause the loss of at least 10% of our employees. Using the healthcare industry as an example, since the start of COVID and the institution of vaccine mandates in their workplace, 18% of our nurses have quit their jobs. Mayor Bill Blasio of New York City states that these mandates should be in place because they work and they'll keep people alive. He believes that if we do not focus on getting our people vaccinated, we will have to go back to lockdowns and restrictions and possibly lose another year to this virus. Both sides agree that increasing the vaccination rate is the solution to our issue, but Hutchinson thinks that forcing the country to take the vaccine will cause more division between political parties and cause more issues than it will fix. He states that we have never historically mandated vaccinations, and especially not for young people, or with a vaccine that has only been approved by emergency authorization. As of 3/26 of 2022, only 1,000 people under 18 have died from COVID out of our 100,000 deaths in the US. The pediatric numbers are 1% of the total, and the CDC website still recommends that anyone over 5 gets fully vaccinated. When the Biden administration decided to enforce a vaccine mandate on large companies, the decision was taken to court. Justice Stephen Breyer said it was unbelievable that it could be in the public interest to put the vaccine mandate on hold. Justice Neil Gorsuch and Chief Justice John Roberts, both in the court's conservative majority, suggested officials had overstepped. Since the principle of judicial review has been established for legislation and executive actions to be determined unconstitutional, the integrity of these government mandates has been questioned in a court of law previously. One specific instance is Jacobson versus Massachusetts in 1922. The court's decision regarding mandates stated that the individual liberties are not absolute and subject to the police power of the state. It found that the Massachusetts law did not violate the 14th Amendment and held in every well-ordered society charged with the duty of conserving the safety of its members, the rights of the individual in respect of his liberty, may at times, under the pressure of great dangers, be subjected to such restraint, to be enforced by reasonable regulations as the safety of the general public may demand, and that real liberty for all could not exist under the operation of a principle which recognizes the right of each individual person to use his own liberty, whether in respect of his person or his property, regardless of the injury that it may be done to others. John Locke's social contract theory is highly applicable to the current situation. Our founding fathers used Locke's ideas when writing the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Locke believed that the law of nature commanded that the members of society do no harm to others in regard to their life, liberty, health, or possessions. He believed that all members of society had the right to pursue their own interests, and that by staying in society they were subjecting themselves to a social contract with the rulers they appointed in a lawful society to ensure that they each retained their personal freedoms. Overall, this theory further strengthens the view that the government mandates are both necessary and proper to ensure the safety of society as a whole. To sum everything up, COVID has impacted our economy, mental health, individual incomes, and especially physical health of the country. There are many ways the government attempted to control the spread of COVID-19, and no one in our country could agree on a good course of action. Politicians, doctors, scientists, students, and everyday citizens disagreed and believed that our government should be allowed different amounts of power and different actions. Some are in favor of federal mandates, and others believe that it should be left up to the state/local authorities. Many believe that our government was out of line by enacting so many regulations. I hope that the information I've provided with you today will help you understand more about the COVID-19 situation and the steps that we're taking to combat it. What do you think? Should we make the decision regarding vaccines for the greater good, or allow the country to decide for themselves?
Very good.